Yo, what's good? It's your man, 100 Grand Ross with The Rock Never Stops. I'm back from some time off. You know, we all got to take a little bit of time off to get some energy back. But it's my first video back. And with this video, I wanted to jump into a little boxing. Most of y'all know that I'm an NBA channel, but every once in a while, I like to dibble dabble into the sport of boxing because it's one that's fascinated me over the past 6, 7 years. And I got to talk about this Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford fight. If you enjoy the video, smash the like button for me, hit subscribe and the bell for notifications. Yo, I want to make this video about why Errol Spence 100% should run it back. Should run it back. I know a lot of y'all, including myself, the first time I seen it, I was like, nah, the way you got beat, no way you should run it back. But I'm going to be real with y'all. There were some consistent themes throughout this fight that told me he could do something different. And not just do something different, but he could give himself enough of a push in terms of being able to impose his will in this fight that I think it makes it far more even in the way that we all thought it was going to be. I didn't do any videos leading up to it. I probably should have, but one of the consistent themes that I said was that ring rust is real. Ring rust is not something to be diminished, played with, to act like it doesn't make a difference. Errol Spence not having been in the ring in over a year and a half, or about a year and a half, it showed up. Not just with his timing, but with his instincts. His instincts in terms of his defense, in terms of how he can make adjustments in the moment. You see, it's not just about what you know how to do, but what you have honed to the point that it becomes instinctual and you're doing it by habit in the moment. And the thing is, when you're fighting another great fighter, not just a regular good fighter, not just a champion, but an all-time great fighter, how you have to show up is you have to show up so honed in, so locked in, so refined, that you are operating at a maximum, if not a 10 out of 10, you're at a 9.8. But if I'm real with y'all, I felt like Errol Spence was at an 8.7 out of 10. He was not at his best. And I want to dive into some of that. The first thing that I want to say is all props to Terrence Crawford out of Omaha, Nebraska. He is everything that we thought he was, those of us who were fans of his. For those of y'all who were just hating and acting like he wasn't all that he was, hey, you know what? That's your life. But it's not mine. I love Terrence Crawford. I thought he's an excellent fighter. I love Errol Spence. I think he's an excellent fighter. But I think the difference was one came in fine-tuned on a razor-sharp edge. The other one came in a bit dull. Errol Spence came in a bit dull, and it got exposed quickly. His pressure was not, how would you say, how they say intelligent pressure, how they say focused pressure, how you're locked in, and every time that you come in, it's extremely deliberate and it's sharp. He was not. He was lunging early. He was struggling to gauge the distance early. And that created far too many openings. Openings that Terrence Crawford was able to exploit because Errol Spence's defense was lacking. He did a couple of no-nos in boxing that he should have known all along. Is that when you retreat, you don't retreat in a straight line. You don't come straight back. You have to make sure that as you're retreating, either you are pivoting and circling around, or you're at least giving some head movement to where he can't go straight in behind your retreat, behind whatever punch you were throwing, and find your head right there behind the glove where it was when you first threw the punch. Now look, I'm a basketball channel. I ain't got all the language, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Is that when he's retreating in a straight line, he allowed Terrence to come right back in with that counter straight right piston that he was throwing all night long. Now, that was the first thing. That was something that I would say fundamentally off top really tipped the scales in Terrence Crawford's favor. is that he didn't have to search for Errol Spence. He didn't have to paw and try to find him when he was countering. He knew exactly where he was going to be. He wasn't dropping the levels. He wasn't moving his head. He wasn't circling around. And I'm actually going to get to how I think he can adjust moving forward later on. But that's the first area where I saw if Errol Spence shores up that much, just making sure that he's moving his head more, especially when he's retreating, so that Terrence has to search for him instead of knowing exactly where he's going to be. Being able to hit on over 50% of your power punches, and not to mention that jab was a power punch in and of itself that they didn't realize until he explained it afterwards. That his ability to land at such a high percentage was specifically because Errol was not circling around and he wasn't moving his head. Now, secondly, I want to say the other area was that when he was trying to find the range, he was overreaching, but not just overreaching, but the time that it took for him to bring his jab back. I think before he's been able to get away with it, or he's been able to put it out there because he puts a lot of power behind it. But that power, it lingered and it caused him to overextend. I think one of the things that he needs to do is he needs to fire far more of a piston where he's throwing it and bringing it right back. Right back. Even though he's applying pressure and coming in, the longer he leaves it out there, the more susceptible he is to Terrence Crawford's counterpunch. Now, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Terrence Crawford has more speed. And he showed that he had more accuracy, though I think Errol Spence, like I said, he came out at like an 8.7 out of 10 instead of a 9.8. I think Errol Spence has better accuracy than what he displayed. But I think the ring rust caused him to not just not have the timing, but also it took him a while to gauge the distance. And it left him out there hanging too many times. Now, I think that if he can get that jab out there and get it back as he continues to come in, especially when he's doubling up on the jab, look, you're going to get hit. And this is an all-time great fight. So it's not like you're going in with your game plan with the mindset of I'm not going to get hit. But it's to say, can you impose your will? If we look at this fight, Terrence Crawford got hit. He got hit a lot. Errol Spence landed a lot, probably more than he got credit for. But his accuracy and his timing and ability to gauge the distance was probably the difference between another 20, maybe close to 30% of his punches potentially landing versus missing, right? Coming behind the head and missing versus actually landing on the back of the ear, right? These were the little things that I felt like he could have tipped the scales if he was landing more accurately and not just leaving his hand out there or misjudging the distance or his timing, as he said, to where his punches weren't landing, right? That's something he can shore up. Now, another thing that Errol Spence needs to shore up was in his footwork. And this kind of references the first point about how he was retreating on the defensive. As he was coming out, he needed to move his feet better. He got a bit flat-footed as he started hunting in those mid to later rounds, really trying to land something. He needed to be sharper to where he said, look, I know I got to come for him. I know I got to apply that pressure. But as I retreat, I've got to get the hell out of there. I've got to move my feet to where I can get space and distance from this cat before I reset to come back at him. And I think that was a big difference because many times, especially towards the end when he was getting caught, he was just flat-footed. He was throwing and then he would get caught and he would just kind of crouch instead of utilizing his footwork to move back or at least circle around so he can get out of range or out of position for that counter. I think that is something that he can definitely improve upon. But I also want to get into where I actually think he can make the greatest difference. And I think it would be great for him to bring in somebody like Kenny Porter. I know it might be blasphemous. Look, I told y'all I'm an NBA channel, but I think I know what I'm talking about a little bit from what I'm saying and what I'm seeing. Kenny Porter understands applied pressure. He understands how to do so in a means where you keep your fighter off balance. In other words, you're not so much in a rhythm where Terrence is able to catch your momentum consistently over time to set up traps for you. By the end of the fight, he set up traps. That uppercut when he retreated into the ropes was a complete trap. He was dominating the fight. He had the distance. He was landing what he wanted to. And then he said, you know what? I want you to come in. And he took those steps back as Errol Spence was landing. I'm not going to say he was landing flush, but he was landing enough to where Terrence knew he was going to keep coming if he started to retreat, because that's Spence's nature. And as soon as he started backing up into those ropes, he threw that kind of a check uppercut. It wasn't as much of a counter as they said, because he gets hit right after he throws the uppercut. So he actually steps back and sees Spence coming, and he just throws it, assuming, and you could tell in the mid to later rounds, he starts throwing punches that's meant to be waiting for Spence if he's coming in. To where he's like, look, I know your nature. You're gonna come. And when you do, this is gonna be waiting for you at the right time or the wrong time for you when you come. And in that moment, when he threw that uppercut, it was waiting for him. So as soon as he came forward, it landed flush right on the jaw, took him down. We all know the rest. But it's to say that if he can apply pressure in a means where, similar to a Sean Porter, where he's circling around and he's not giving Terrence Crawford consistent timing and rhythm, while also utilizing his footwork to retreat, and at the same time is sharper with improved accuracy and ability to gauge that distance, I think he is going to minimize the amount of punches that Crawford was able to land, and he's going to increase the amount of punches he is able to land. And as a result, I think we're going to see it closer to low 40s, upper 30s in terms of what each of them are landing on each other. And as a result, I think what's going to end up happening is he's going to be able to impose his physical will. Because when I saw the fight, look, Errol Spence, when it got stopped, yes, I understand it should have got stopped. And at the same time, if this was back in the day, they would have let him keep fighting. Why? Because Errol Spence never stopped fighting. He never stopped fighting. I rewatched the fight multiple times. And when you watch this fight, Errol Spence never stops. He never stops. Yes, he's hurt. Yes, he was hurt. Did he still have his ability to keep himself on balance? Yes. Even though he was hurt, he could have gotten himself on balance and gotten back into the fight as he had throughout the fight. Yes, he got knocked down several times. I get it. A lot of that, once again, was the timing and him overreaching, the ring rust. But I think if he comes in and he's sharper, he's at a 9.8, 9.9 out of 10, just like Bud, I think he's going to be able to shift the momentum of the fight and be able to impose his will in terms of being a younger, thoroughbred fighter who has a lot of power, who, if he increases the amount of percentage that he's landing, is going to affect Bud all the more. Now, Bud is still going to be dangerous. I still think it moves closer to a 50-50 fight if he can make these adjustments. Because the reality is, Errol Spence is not going to become a different fighter, especially if he fights him in December, right? January. He's not going to be a different fighter. But what he can be is a far more improved fighter in terms of his accuracy, timing, sharpness, and he makes those adjustments defensively so that as he adjusts his attack, he's also able to minimize some of that countering that Terrence Bud Crawford was able to do in the first fight. And I think it shifts slightly in his favor if he's at that 9.8, 9.9. He can't come in at 9.5. It may sound foolish to give the whole decimal thing, but It adds emphasis to just how sharp one has to be in this level of fighting. Now, Terrence Crawford is also going to come back just as good, if not better, with even more confidence. Because he ate a lot of punches. And I think it was a mental fortitude. It wasn't that it wasn't having an effect. It was a mental fortitude that said, I'm going to give you nothing. It reminded me of that movie 300, where he says, give them nothing, take from them everything. And Terrence Bud Crawford had the mentality, I'm going to give you nothing. Even when you land flush, I am determined that you will not know. You will not see it on my face. You won't see it in my body language. Unless you drop me, you will not know at all that you've hurt me. And that was a part of just who Bud is and his makeup going into this fight. He was on the edge. He was on a level 9.9, almost 10 out of 10. Like this was a 10 out of 10 performance. This was everything he was plus some. This was not everything that Errol Spence is. And I think with those adjustments, I think he has a chance to win in a rematch. But as always, let me know what you think. Holla at me in the comment section. It's your man, 100 grand Ross, so the rock never stops. Get at me in the comment section. You know we're going to talk it up, chop it up. Get at your boy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. I'm going to get at y'all next time. And I'm back, boy. Peace.